All right, and we are live with today's episode of The Left Wing. As usual, I'm John Cooper from Counterpoint Politics, joined by my wonderful co-host TJ from Power is Taken, Not Given. We also have two wonderful guests today from the Labor Jawn podcast, representing Philly's best. We have Gabe and Sam. So today we are going to be discussing four very interesting topics. We're going to start with a little RFK Jr. talk. I know TJ wanted to talk about him because he's probably not going to be talked about too much more very relatively shortly. So we wanted to make sure we got our thoughts out about him. We got two, not one, but two topics related to the wonderful Elon Musk. And then we are also talking about Ilhan Omar surviving her primaries. And what it means for the progressive movement in general, what we can learn from Ilhan Omar and AOC winning where Cori Bush failed. So let's get into it, TJ. I know you wanted to talk about RFK, so I'm going to let you take the reins here.
Yeah, so RFK Jr., it's exactly what John mentioned before, that I really want to discuss this guy because he's been such a fascinating character over the last 20 years that I've been aware of his existence. But watching him run in this presidential campaign has been interesting because when he first started out, I remember we were talking on the show last year about how this is going to work out. And in my mind, I just had it that RFK is clearly going to take more votes away from Trump because, he's the anti-vax guy. He's the insane conspiracy guy. And he fits like with the Joe Rogan crowd. And I think that was generally the case until we looked later into, this spring and summer. And it seemed that like a lot of disaffected people, like a lot of I can't vote for either of these two weirdos, a lot of them flocked toward RFK. And seeing how a lot of those have been, supporting him lately, I've just been interested in following this trajectory that he's on. Now, earlier this week, a judge came out with a decision that blocked him from the New York ballot. And he was blocked from the New York ballot. I was trying to read why. And it was because he doesn't, when he filed his petition to get on the ballot, it was through a technicality because he put his address as being in New York when he actually didn't live in New York. So, it may stand and it might not. And if you go to RFK's actual website for his campaign, it shows all the states that they have registered for ballot access. It doesn't show the ones they actually have. The one they actually have, I have right here. It's like 12 or 15 states that he's actually viable to run on. So I'm just curious what you guys think. Now the states that he's in are interesting. That's the part that makes it interesting to me, is that you see he's in Pennsylvania. He's in Michigan. He's in Wisconsin. He's in North Carolina, like states that are going to be contested that might actually have an effect on this. So I was just curious to see what you guys thought is going to be RFK's role in this election, if he's even going to go through with it, given the problems that he's had right now. John, what do you think? What's up with you?
Sure. No, I think that I don't think he makes it all the way, TJ. My biggest, I don't even know if it's a fear, but I think he's going to drop out and endorse Trump. If you were to ask me, gun to my head, what I think is going to happen, he's going to drop out and endorse Trump. What effect that's going to have, I don't really know, because I don't know a single RFK Jr. supporter. I don't know. I have never seen anyone in person who's going to vote for RFK. I've never seen anyone online who's going to vote for RFK. I don't know what this kind of person is. I know we discussed a little bit yesterday about how a lot of the support Harris has gained has seemingly came from RFK, and it did, maybe make us readjust our priors about what an RFK supporter was. But it's really unclear whether he's going to have any impact at all, because as long as Harris continues her momentum, I think those votes are just going to go her way. But I don't know. Sam, what do you think?
I don't think he's sticking around. I don't see that. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be back in Trump, though, because once Kamala got into the race, I think she actually took a lot of his, because I think a lot of people were so put off by Biden and Trump, they're like, I'm going to go with RFK. But now that maybe they think Kamala maybe is more, what's the word?
Palatable.
Palatable. There you go. That she doesn't have as much. Well, it depends on how far you look into it, but she doesn't have as much visual baggage as Biden does that you can easily reference. So I don't know, but it's what an enigma RFK is. That's all I'll say.
Wait, what an enigma he is? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure an enigma is what's in his brain right now. But
oh shit!
Yeah, Gabe, what have your thoughts been on the RFK campaign thus far?
I just want to say I'm disappointed in the timing of this conversation because we picked the one like normal news week for RFK from the past month.
Yes.
He's not defending eating a dog or placing a dead bear in New York. So,
free game for the conversation. This is a general RFK discussion. Yes,
we can talk about
bear,
all of it.
Killing a bear. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think I think there is a slim chance of him being a spoiler candidate, but at this point, I think it's mostly from the Trump camp. I think that he is like I agree that his initial support from the Democrat side were disaffected Democrats that didn't want anything to do with Biden. I would probably argue that they weren't necessarily there on a policy stance because he has proven to be pretty nutty on Gaza and everything else. Aside from some of his good climate takes and some critique of the two-party system. But I think the people who are still backing him are kind of the more like conspiracy-minded independent types that don't want to vote for either party. And I think both, and especially with how much Trump and Vance have been kind of floundering lately, I think that there's at least a small chance that he's going to pull like maybe half a percentage point or 1 percentage point off of them, which could, like in Pennsylvania, that could make the difference.
Half a percentage point is massive in this election. Yeah. And God, John and I wish we could do every episode on JD Vance. At least I do. I haven't asked John for this, but I want to do JD Vance every single episode because he's just so fucking weird. But what you guys were mentioning about Sam brought something up that was prescient to this entire conversation. So RFK, I don't know if you guys saw this. This report came out this morning or yesterday that RFK reached out to the Harris campaign about an administration role in exchange for an endorsement. I don't know if you guys saw that. So the plot kind of thickens with this guy because I didn't see that coming. I would have thought the same thing that John said, that he was definitely like a Trump backer, and that because he had that whole thing. There were a couple of videos coming out with his staff saying, yeah, we're in this here to tank Biden, or, you know, another video that came out where he's talking to Donald Trump about strategy and everything. So like having this to be like a Shakespearean thing where he turns his back on Trump would be kind of climactic too. I do kind of enjoy that, but I don't know where this ends up. I really don't. And it is funny you were mentioning how this is the most normal RFK story we could have possibly done. You know, we could have done the brainworm story, we could have done the bear story. We could have done literally anything. But, you know, this one is actual play they're going with. But I like what Sam said about how Kamala is just the more palatable answer for people. And I think it surprised even our most optimistic expectations for what could have happened with Kamala Harris is that, you know, Biden, what we always talk about in the show is that I had been saying for over a year now that I thought Biden was going to beat Trump primarily because the election was going to be still a referendum on Trump, just like it was in 2020. But after the debate, it became a referendum on Biden. After that, Biden became the guy people were actually worried about. And so replacing him, it's still a referendum. It's back to being a referendum on Trump. And people have a more a more exciting version of what the United States could possibly be. Because it's not like they're running on policy when it comes to Harris. It's not like she's come out with like a huge platform of stuff that she supports and everything. But I don't know if you guys saw this. This fits with you guys. You guys are in Pennsylvania, right? This is this goes into the Rust Belt area here. So this poll shows that Trump is losing support for one of the demographics that reliably backed him, essential to winning the White House, white voters without a college degree. And if I remember, so in May, Trump was leading President Biden among white voters without a degree in swing states Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by 25 points. And the latest poll shows that Trump lead has been nearly cut in half. In August, Trump leads Harris by 14 points in those three states among white voters without a college degree. And that is Trump's bread and butter. But I also figured that was RFK's bread and butter. So there's like a weird overlap here going on. And if RFK does drop out, and if he does end up backing Harris, I just think it makes it more in the tank for Harris after that. What do you think, John?
I think that the reason that he called Harris to vie for a spot in the administration is because if you are the spoiler candidate, you want your number one goal, the only thing that matters to you is backing the winning horse. Before Harris entered the race, it was Trump. Like Trump was the winning horse. And you saw this in the videos that came out about his campaign managers. You saw this when Trump got assassinated. He called the video leaked of him calling RFK Jr. I don't know if you guys saw that, but he's in direct communication with Donald Trump. It seems like he was mostly in it to play spoiler for the Democrats. But if the headwinds change significantly enough that, hey, I don't think Trump's going to win this anymore, well, then he just goes crawling over to Kamala. He's like, hey, I got 4% of the vote. How would you like it? The problem with that is, and why I don't think she's going to accept his endorsement, is that I think that everyone who would have voted for RFK, who was a Democrat, was mostly just not voting for Biden. And that's why we've seen him fall about 2 percentage points since Kamala entered the race. But anyone who was voting for him because they, supported him and his policy would be supportive of Trump, not Kamala. So it doesn't seem like there'd be anything for her to gain from his endorsement other than a bad news cycle for her. I don't know. Sam, I saw you come off of mute there. Did you have thoughts?
No, I was going to exactly just agree with you and say that with Biden is not Trump and Kamala is not Biden. And that's the way a lot of people are going to vote. And I think, hold on one second.
Your daughter has some opinions on this.
I got my 2-year-old has a lot of opinions about the state of this country, and she will tell you. Gabe,
you know what? I've had that same opinion, just crying loudly.
Speak your piece, little mama. Speak your piece.
Well, first, I did realize I forgot to mention I have seen one RFK, yard sign.
Oh.
There is at least one in existence in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. So take that for whatever that's worth. But I think the main thing I'm seeing in this entire election at this point is that anyone who's actually voting on policy made up their minds like 6 months ago, and right now it's who can win the vibes game of who can be out there and and just seem the most sane and cognizant. And I think that's also where, especially after the past couple of weeks, RFK is going to have a lot of issues because he needs to learn to just not be around recording devices for like the next 3 months.
Us too.
For RFK, he says one statement about how COVID was biologically manufactured to spare the lives of Chinese people and Jewish people, and everyone thinks he's crazy for saying something like that. But I know, right? The cancel culture is run amok.
But yeah, he is. Was he a thing before this election cycle?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Did he exist in the obviously he was alive, but like, did he exist in politics before this? Like, this is the first time I've ever heard of RFK. Is this election cycle?
So in the past, so I heard of RFK first about 25 years ago is when I first became aware of him. And that was because he was a huge environmentalist, and he associated with the Democratic Party back in the early 2000s, late 90s. And it's when I noticed how weird his voice was. I was like, man, I've been making fun of his voice for decades now before I learned that, he has an illness or something, but he's still weird. So I'm fine. He's a weirdo. And he was a big environmentalist, and he's always been on this anti-vax kick. He's always been on this. So that's how I was familiar with him, because he was always speaking out about those issues. And I don't know if I told the story on the show about how there was this incident in American Samoa. I can't remember, like 10, 15 years ago. And this hospital had issued out 2 expired vaccines that killed 2 children, and RFK Jr. sent in his goons to spread misinformation about vaccines to the people of American Samoa, and it ended up killing 45 kids because they refused to get vaccinated. So I've been aware of RFK Jr. for a long time, and he has been involved. He hasn't run for anything as far as I know, but he has been a part of the political spectrum for a while, and he's always been fucking crazy. So yeah, nothing new there.
Before we close this out, I just wanted to say one thing. I just realized what the demographic of RFK Jr. supporter is, and it's Democrats who religiously listen to Joe Rogan. That is that is the demographic that he appeals to.
I think you got it.
Weird group of people.
All right, that's our first episode.
Good shit. Did you guys ever listen to Joe Rogan in the past? Because I feel like 6 or 8 years ago, I listened to Joe Rogan, maybe 5, 6 years ago, and I thought it was an entertaining show. He would go off for 3 hours and do comedy bits and talk to interesting people. It wasn't until 2020, 2021 that I thought he started veering off into the weird conspiracy. Or maybe I just didn't notice it back then. I didn't listen enough. I wasn't a subscriber or anything, but whenever I heard the interviews, I thought it was decent, back in the day. Either you guys listen to it? Sam or Gabe? No?
No, not really.
No, but I mean, the episodes that I have watched were because of the guests that he has on. It's not for Joe Rogan. It's for Joe Rogan plus whoever he's talking to. So
yeah,
I never watched the show because it was too damn long. He did not understand how. I don't understand how he got so big, because he doesn't understand how to make blocks of content that are watchable and consumable. I guess it was just the clips, but I don't know how people sit and watch the whole show. But I will say Joe Rogan got cooked by COVID. It cooked his brain, not the actual disease, but all of the talk about it. 'Cause he used to be a pretty darn reasonable person. He
just a comedian, yeah.
He was a comedian who interviewed people and was interested in things. And then COVID happened, and people started coming to him as a source of truth, and it just went to his head. And now he's just down the rabbit hole. And you can say that about a lot of people, honestly.
Yeah. Rogan was one of those guys. Rogan, what people say that, Joe Rogan is like your pot smoking older brother. He does give off that kind of vibe, And, he was a jock. He was big in the UFC. And I don't know if you guys remember Fear Factor, that show back in the 90s or 2000s, that people remember Fear Factor and stuff. So they're like, oh, Joe Rogan's just a cool guy. And, he cracks jokes every now and then. And he always had the weird conspiracy people on, the benign ones for the most part, ancient aliens nonsense and, Bigfoot folks, stuff that didn't really hurt anybody. And then he was just primed for the COVID conspiracies. It wasn't his fault. He didn't have the brain matter to actually fight it. So, I guess it was always going to happen. It was just unfortunate that it happened to the biggest podcaster in the country. And did you guys see clips from that goddamn special he did on Netflix? Oh, did you see it?
Haven't.
Yeah, I saw a couple of them. I think on another lefty streamer's commentary on it, but it was painful.
It awful.
It was bad. Oh no, go right ahead.
No, he was doing stuff like an actual joke he said on there was, "Oh, did you assume my gender? Did you know that's a thing you can do now? You can assume people's gender." I
He
said,
didn't
"Man,
actually say that.
he did word for word. That's what he said. You can assume people's gender. Can you believe that?" I'm saying, man, it's 2024. You're a professional comedian, man. You can do better than this. That is, it was kind of like you watch conservative comedy and it's not laughter, it's clapter. It's like, oh, the liberals are sure dumb, aren't they? And everyone starts applauding about how dumb the liberals are. It's like it's happened to better comedians than Joe Rogan, unfortunately, but that's where he is now.
I think there needs to just be like a general social purge of every stand-up comic from the 90s. I don't think any of them are salvageable at this point. Like all of their brains just kind of shut off in the past 5 years, and we just need to scrub them from existence. I'm not advocating a comedian genocide, just a general ban on any streaming platforms for them. They should not have an audience anymore.
It's a comedicide, is what Gabe is backing here. That is, I think there should be, you know what it is? There needs to be an upper age limit for comedians. That like once you hit 45, you're done. You can't do comedy anymore because you're just from an older era and you're not going to translate. And the older you get, the less I expect you to adapt to changing times. I get it. That's just going to happen. So maybe don't tell the jokes anymore. Like watching Dave Chappelle now is impossible. It's just impossible to do. And I never would have said that, in 2003 or something. Do you remember when he had Elon Musk come up there and he's like, everybody give it up for the, that's part of our, you remember that, Sam?
Yeah, that was brutal to watch. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop for him to make a joke out of it. It never happened. What happened?
Yes. Could you imagine Dave Chappelle in 2002 saying, "Let's all suck the dick of the richest man on earth"? Hey, could you imagine him saying?
He would have eviscerated him back then. It's a shame. But
I don't know what their brains do just turn to mush. Don't they? I just looked at like a list of stand-up comedians from the 90s. None of them.
Any good ones?
None of them
Any
are funny
ones?
anymore. But it's not every like George Carlin was funny until he was old.
Okay.
I
was gonna say. Okay.
I was that's like it's not just the age. I think it's the age of the internet just cooked comedians who are pre-internet. They can't do it anymore. It's weird.
All right, I'm getting very close to the mic to say this because you're not going to believe that I'm going to say this, but George Carlin was not funny when he was old. He was. I will die on this hill. There are these like the special. I remember watching the last special George Carlin did, the one people play all the time, where he's saying stuff like, the United States government doesn't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't give a fuck about you. And everyone's claps like that's not funny. That's not a joke. And people play that shit all the time. And like it's a big club and you ain't in it. None of it is comedy. It is just when comedians get old, they look to be a comedian. You need to be. George Carlin was more of a philosopher than a comedian.
There you
go. Yeah. So, but when they get old. They start, to be a comedian, you need to have like this introspective view on life and break down things that people know, but don't put the pieces together and then present it to the audience. And it elicits a, involuntary response of laughter. It's just part of being a human being. But you do this long enough and you start to get bitter and angry. You start watching like old George Carlin or old Lenny Bruce, old Richard Pryor. It's just like, it's not funny anymore. And you lose touch with, current society, kind of like how musicians make all their biggest hits in their 20s and 30s. Very rarely does a musician come out with a solid banger in their 60s because you're just not part of pop culture anymore. And George Carlin, whom I love, I think that his stuff from the 70s and 80s was really funny, but 90s, no, sorry, I'm not. I think he fell victim to it too. And like I said, that's what I was thinking about when I said this has happened to a lot better comedians than Joe Rogan. Was George Carlin specifically, because I don't think his stuff when he was old was all that funny. But that's just one man's opinion, and Carlin's dead, so we can't come back to say anything about this.
I think there's something to that. I think it's definitely like what I definitely think happened to Joe Rogan is supreme example of just audience capture that
Mm-hmm.
he has been surrounded by sycophants for so long that anything that he just assumes anything that he thinks is correct must be correct. And once you get to a certain amount of like social influence or just economic power or whatever, no one is going to tell you, hey, that like you're not funny. What the fuck are you doing? And that's honestly to a certain extent probably what happened to Carlin as well, that he was still booking gigs. People were still paying to go see him. So why change his stand-up at all? Or why like take a step back and think about, or why change the formula if he's making money off of it? And I think that like at least within the past couple years, there's just been a swath of people getting kind of wrapped up in basically just smelling their own farts and convincing themselves and their audience convincing them that they're the greatest thing on earth.
Gabe has a master's degree, everybody.
Gabe,
not in anything at all related to this, but
Gabe, I'm glad you brought up people who surround themselves with sycophants and really need someone to step up and tell them they're not funny. What the fuck are you doing? Because our next two topics are about one, Elon Musk, who might be.
I thought we were going to talk about Labor Jawn for a second. Gabe's been trying to get rid of me for years.
We that's a good plug for the show. If you guys like our guests, go check out the Labor Jawn podcast.
Real quick, John, before you get started, so I wasn't familiar with you guys' show, but I will subscribe to it. Labor Jawn, I thought you meant like it was Labor Jawn, like his name was John, like a person named John. That's what I thought when I first heard it, and so I was kind of surprised to see that. But just want to throw that out there.
Oh no, it is. We're on a search for Labor Jawn. John, he's this elusive character, this labor leader who was born in 1872, and I can keep going. You got it.
He's the grandson of General Ludd, and
yes.
Now we're getting all right. Anyway,
wait, I'm sorry.
No, we're
derailing our whole podcast here.
I don't know what's
Is
going
there
on
like
here.
an actual like historical figure that you're
I
looking
can't
for
tell.
here?
General Ludd is the mythical figure of so the term Luddite was referring to British weavers who destroyed modern weaving machines.
Oh God, what have I done?
Yeah, you started with them. And they like created this mythical folk hero of General Ned Ludd that from all historical accounts didn't exist, but there are depictions of him. And there's like a bunch of songs about him. But from what everyone can tell, he basically just got made up by a bunch of angry weavers. And no one really knows where exactly he came from.
I've heard the Weaver thing before, because that was like a populist labor movement, but just that was very wrong. We're not always right. But
I'm a defender of the Luddites.
Okay. We're about to have a Luddite debate here.
The issue was that Parliament, having been captured by the rising capitalist class, removed protections for the trades and basically made it so that new business owners could basically overnight just wipe out the entire weaving trade and change everything over to larger or to wide water-powered mills. And so what the Luddites were doing was basically just a protest and a riot against those changes in law. And all they wanted, like they didn't want modern weaving equipment to be destroyed or to no longer exist. They just wanted to make sure that there were protections for their trade and their livelihood as these new machines came in. So it was much more about like having power on the shop floor than new thing bad. But
interesting. And
they have been
wrote the history books, and now we just associate them with idiots.
Yes. So it's much more like the movement against AI right now, like is the modern comparison.
Got ya.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not the brightest person here, but okay, so I got the general alert thing. Labor Jawn, though, is a real thing.
No.
That,
Oh
like,
yeah,
a real
no, we
legend?
never circled back
Okay,
to that.
all right,
Yeah.
okay, just making sure. Okay, I was like, okay, I got it so far, but the mythical descendants of this legendary figure that was made up for the. I was having a hard time connecting the dots. So wait, what is the name in reference to then?
Do you want to take this, Sam?
All right, fine. Jawn is just a Philly term for pretty much it's a placeholder for any noun.
Yeah.
So our podcast is essentially called Labor Thing.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I had never heard that
twist.
Before.
Yeah.
Watch Creed. He explains it better. But okay. Speaking of AI and labor movements and people involved in these things, let's talk about how the UAW, Shawn Fain, wish we could call him a friend of the podcast, Shawn Fain, that we really like on this podcast, is suing Elon Musk and Donald Trump for comments they made. Oh, look at this. He came prepared. For those listening on the podcast right now, Gabe just took his outer shirt off to reveal a UAW t-shirt. So he came prepared. But yeah, so essentially Shawn Fain is and UAW is suing Elon Musk and Donald Trump for comments that they made on their Twitter space. I don't even know what it's called now. It's an X space. I really have no clue. That they did on Monday, where Donald Trump praised Elon Musk for firing workers who threatened to go on strike, which for those of you following along at home is very, very illegal to do. And Elon Musk, he laughed and said, yeah, which I don't think that's going to stick in a court of law. But what Donald Trump said was definitely very illegal. And I do find it interesting because on one side of this camp, we have people saying, oh, this is a political stunt. This wouldn't be happening if it wasn't these highly charged political figures, to which I do agree. I don't think that Shawn Fain and the UAW would be suing random podcasters who said this. But also, I think it's still illegal. And it's something that we should hold people to. Gabe, this is, I feel like this was like, I want to talk about this anyway, but I was like, Labor Jawn is going to want to talk about this. They're gonna have some feelings, and you've already shown up with the shirt. So what are your takes on this lawsuit and this situation in general?
So first off, the primary issue is that both Donald Trump and Elon Musk are employers whose employees have the ability to unionize, which so that, like, the way National Labor Relations Act works, from my understanding, because I am very much not a labor lawyer, but basically, and the way the lawsuit is framed is the UAW is filing a charge with the National Labor Relations Board that Musk and Trump are intimidating their workers with a threat of firing. And that's also why, like, they wouldn't do this against some random podcaster unless that podcaster had more than 2 employees who counted as employees under the NLRA. It gets really, labor law is really fucking complicated. But and then Musk, even aside from the politics around Fain and Trump, I think more than anything, this is a target against Musk, that he's trying to UAW is trying to ramp up pressure because Tesla has shown to be Tesla corporate has been shown to be extremely anti-union. They have a lot of really just horrendous workplace violations that have come out. And Fain in the past has talked about targeting Tesla, or at least hinted at it. Because you don't want to spoil a potential campaign by saying you're targeting them. It's a whole thing. But then the unfortunate side of all of this is that the way labor law also works is that both Musk and Trump are going to get, like, basically the National Labor Relations Board is going to wag their finger at them and say, hey, don't do that. And that's kind of it. And that's like this. It is a political stunt in that regard that like this isn't going to bring down Tesla, but it is. It's just the UAW kind of flexing their power and saying like, hey, even if you're just joking around, we're watching you and we're gonna keep you on your toes, which is good. That's what major unions should be doing. The bosses should never feel comfortable, so long as there's a strong labor movement. So anyway, that was my rant.
Sam, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't have a rant except to say that Sean Fain is my labor daddy, and he will always remain so.
He's my labor daddy. We should get
No,
t-shirts made. Sean Fain's labor daddy.
Us first. We called it first. No, I like Sean Fain, especially compared to other union presidents in this that have been in the presidential race or have been put in their 2 cents and going to certain conventions. But we're not going to talk about that certain person. But
I was about to say, what was that guy's name? I couldn't remember his name.
I'm sorry, I'm being too flippant. Sean O'Brien is president of Teamsters.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I like Sean Fain. I agree with Gabe where this is just like it's kind of a stunt, but he's been trying to put real pressure on Trump. Fain called Trump a scab, which let's just say that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are the farthest you can get from friends of labor.
Mm-hmm.
And but I like Sean Fain. I like what he's doing. I didn't like the only major downside to him and his choices in the past year were him endorsing Biden so soon after what happened in Gaza. I think that was a bad move. I think he should have kept the worker power up. He should have tried to string along these politicians as long as possible, get as much as you can from these people. But yeah, I think with this instance was just a little stunt. I don't think it's going to hold water. I don't think
I do want to add on to that. I think it's a stunt, but it like that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, because it's just effectively UAW flexing their power, and it shows that there's it got this into the news, and now there's a bunch of news stories saying, hey, your boss saying that they're going to fire you for striking is illegal, which most people don't necessarily know that, because at least the time that I tried to organize a union, that was the first thing that came up, was not wanting to get fired for striking or then being forced to go on strike, because most people, I think we're at like 12% union density, and public sector is even lower, or private sector is even lower. And so most workers don't really know any of this, but it's now, if not front page news, at least out there in the zeitgeist that doing this shit's illegal.
Yeah. I think that I think you're right about Sam is right when he's saying that, it is a stunt, and that Gabe is completely correct talking about how just because it's a stunt, it's still pretty good. When you're in a situation when you don't have the power to actually, enact change as you want, you kick up a fuss. You become a big ass problem that they have to deal with. We have to resort to guerrilla warfare, and you don't win all of your skirmishes. Your goal isn't even to win the skirmish. It's really to just, be an annoying gnat that they can't seem to get rid of. And what I wanted to talk about, well, first thing you mentioned, John, that how they had this the conversation on X, on Twitter Spaces, but she's like, well, what do they call it? An X space, SpaceX. That would be a good one. I don't know if that's what they call it, but they might. It would be perfect, TJ. Right? It's too clever for Elon to probably come up. Although I have to take something back though. Elon did actually do something pretty clever that I didn't catch with in fact, I don't think he came up with it, but it was how he named the Tesla models. He talked about in the interview the Tesla models. He named the first one the Model S, and then you have the Model E, the Model X, and the Model Y. It spells sexy. I was like, oh, I didn't guess that. It is clever. I wouldn't have done it. I didn't notice it. So now I wouldn't have done it because sexy is a weird word to pick, but the fact that I didn't catch that that's what they were doing with it, spelling an actual letter, I think is actually cleverer to do because, people put letters on cars all the time. But yeah, sexy is a weird word to pick. I would admit that. And slightly off topic, but Donald Trump also made a funny joke when he said that he planned to go back to Butler, Pennsylvania. And he said that when he gets on stage, he's going to say, as I was saying, and then go into his speech. And that's very funny. I don't care what you guys say. That's pretty clever. That's Donald Trump right there. I like that. But the thing with union members, why I like Sean Fain so much is I can't even name any other UAW presidents. I can't name another one. Maybe I'm not, well versed enough in unions and stuff, but he's the first one that I've seen really put some balls and some energy into the shit and get it nationwide and get people and make conservatives defend their closeted position that they're anti-union. And it's always bugged me. I'm sure you guys run into this all the time, Sam and Gabe, about how conservatives always talk about unions and they're like, well, you need to go out and get yourself a union job. That's going to be good for you and everything. And then, behind their back, they're always stabbing unions in the back at every conceivable opportunity. And I like the UAW strike because it made them have to say out loud, okay, well, why are these concessions that they're demanding so bad? Like, a 40% increase in the raise when the executives got a 40% increase in the raise and stuff like that. I'm a really big fan of going there. And what Trump and Musk, when they were talking about that the line they're getting sued over, this is like a conservative's wet dream, what Trump just said. I don't know how many times I've heard over the years, conservatives say how badass it was that Ronald Reagan fired all those flight control people. Have you guys run across this? They say it all the time. They say, yeah, they went on strike and Reagan went on TV and said, guess what? You're all fucking fired. And they jizzed their pants hearing that shit. And so I like the fact that union membership and fighting for unions is getting more popularity. And I don't know, have you guys heard Elon Musk talking about why he doesn't want a union? Have you guys ever heard him mention this in his speeches? He says two things that I remember. The first thing he says is that he doesn't want to create a union because a union sets up a lords and peasants relationship. Have you guys heard him say that? He says that all the time, which
most ridiculous
I don't know.
Thing. It's like piss on me and tell me it's raining. Like what? It's the opposite. It's just like he says it's just like when he's like he's the one who speaks to power. He's fighting against the elites. Like he says this kind of dumbass bizarro world bullshit all the time.
All the time. And it's like that one doesn't make sense no matter how you look at it. It's like so Elon, are you telling me you're a lord or a peasant or that you're neither in this scenario? I don't know how this works. And the second thing I've noticed him saying all the time makes it's even more of a non sequitur where he talks about, well, I saw at Ford places and, Chrysler and all those places, they have an executive elevator and we don't have an executive elevator. And to him, that's all the equality they need. I've heard him mention that like half a dozen times, it seems. So I don't know. I'm just a big fan. Like whether it actually is successful in court or not, I guess it's not going to be from what you guys are saying, but it's good for the publicity to get it out there about how completely, and I mentioned Donald Trump, how many times he's talked about, being anti-union, that, the more people know about this, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the one thing that I think both Sam and I have learned from learning labor history through making this podcast has been that anti-union rhetoric hasn't changed in well over like 150 years. And I can't say I remember a specific lords and peasants thing, but there's always a third party, or the union is the third party coming in and changing the good system that we have here. And then in addition to that, before the National Labor Relations Act, just firing anyone who goes on strike or shooting them, which were kind of the two options for a while. But there's, and I also did want to say with the court case, it's not that it won't succeed. Like, it's pretty open and shut that the National Labor Relations Board is going to look at this, say like, yes, they did an unfair labor violation, and then they're going to issue them a warning saying, hey, don't do unfair labor practices. But it's just the way labor law in the US is written that it doesn't really go beyond that until if like, and this gets really into the weeds, but like if there was someone trying to form a union who then got fired, this could be used as evidence in that against like Tesla or something, saying there is a documented history of Elon Musk committing unfair labor practices, and therefore I should be reinstated and allowed to continue to form a union at Tesla. So this, like, I think it's getting blown out of proportion for what it is. Like, it's not a huge lawsuit, but it's laying the groundwork for something down the line and shows that Sean Fain is going out and being very public about it. And I think I'll hand it over to Sam and Lucy.
I didn't literally mean the cough, but not on mic. But I was just gonna say, going back to what like TJ was saying about Sean Fain, one of the first things he said, that you were like, he's getting so much traction because he's really going out there, and because it's also because the labor movement is heating up so much, and also because Sean Fain is just trying to be out there and trying to ride that wave. But if you're very much into him and the history at all of unions, look up UAW President Walter Reuther, and because he looks up to him, or he looked up to him. He died in 1970, but he was big into the civil rights. He was big into he marched with MLK, and what you see, it's very it's what Sean Fain is doing is mirroring a lot of what Walter Reuther was doing too. So if you're interested in the history of it, look up that gentleman.
And that's a wonderful place to end it. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we're officially sponsored by George Soros, who gave us $2 for all the good work. So we've made it, TJ. George Soros has finally given us that sweet.
Oh my God! Look, George, we appreciate it. We appreciate it so much, and we're going to continue to do the devil's work for you. As long as you can. Oh man, I love it. That's great. I don't know who did that, but that's fantastic. Well, I mean George Soros, obviously, but
yeah, obviously that's the real George Soros.
We appreciate it, Mr. Soros.
Can you imagine, TJ, that George Soros just like surfs like YouTube live streams for a couple viewers,
that would be
and just
funny.
Gives them like pennies? Like
that would be funny. You know what? If I were George Soros, that's exactly what I would do. That's exactly what else am I gonna do? You're a fucking billionaire. I wanna address. So Heather sent a wave. Thank you, Heather. And Treestop says left over right, of course. And he also said something that I didn't appreciate. How did you not know John was Philly slang? I am from the South and knew that. Okay, Treestop, good for you. Yeah, your medal is in the mail. Like, well, what do you want?
Got to understand, Treestop, is TJ's old. He's not hip with the lingo.
Is it new slang? I mean, I don't know. Really. It's yeah.
I could say an Urban Dictionary post from like 2010 said that it originated in my and Bibi Netanyahu's alma mater of Cheltenham High School.
Oh.
Yeah. Whether or not Urban Dictionary can be considered a reliable source.
For me, it is.
I would like to go back Sorry, I was like to go back to 640 when Tweedledee corrected me on how to pronounce Kamala's name. So it's Kamala.
No, it's Kamala. Yeah, Kamala.
It's Kamala. Hey, I'm from Philly. You're lucky I can pronounce Harris, okay?
So the Kamala Harris thing is interesting because I have been calling her Kamala Harris for years, and then is actually when she was after she was inaugurated as vice president is when I found out it was Kamala, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was kind of hard getting used to. By now I'm used to it, but I get why a lot of people mispronounce it, and just
to
give us
put
time,
things into
folks.
perspective. There's a well-known football player from Philadelphia named Jason Kelsey. His brother Travis Kelsey is a little bit more well known. He's dating the most famous person on the planet. But fun fact, their last name isn't Kelsey; it's Kels. And Philadelphians just started calling him Kelsey, and he never corrected them. So now they're Kelsey.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
I'm trying to think if I'd never seen it before, but it's hard to put myself in that mindset because it is spelled Kels. Yeah. Like there's no Y at the end. So that's interesting. I wanted to pull it up here, this thing. I don't know if you guys saw when you guys talked about Elon Musk always pictures himself as the resistance fighter. He posted, you watch the Hunger Games and sided with the Resistance, Star Wars, The Matrix, Divergence, V for Vendetta. When it's fiction, you understand, yet you realize, but yet you refuse to see it when this reality you're living in. Wild. And I mean, we did the left wing Olympics yesterday. I mean, if this isn't a gold medal lack of self-awareness, I don't know what could be. It's like if I were the richest man on earth, I couldn't imagine saying something like that. I don't know.
It is so lacking self-awareness that every fiber of my being wants to assume that he's trolling. But
it's gotta be right.
He's not.
He's being dead serious.
He can't be that dumb. I know he's dumb. He can't be that dumb.
He must be that dumb. Because it's consistent. If this was a one-off thing, or we've heard him go, "Ha ha, I'm trolling" before, but he's never. Like he does this all the time.
Yeah, this is kind of like it is par for the course for right wingers. That like something that we talk about all the time here on the show is how right wingers always talk about the elites. But they don't mean elites the same way we do. Well, a lot of times they mean Jewish people when they say elites. That's what they mean. But more broadly, when they say elites, we mean economic elites. Like we would call George Soros one of the elites. They wouldn't call Elon Musk one of the elites. They wouldn't do that. Elon Musk is one of them. He's on their team. Librarians and school teachers and Starbucks workers, they're elites, and college professors, people who make between 35 and 60 grand a year because they're cultural elites. You have blue hair, you're part of the elites. They have a twisted version of what the elites mean, and someone who has all the authority to look down on them because they're backward rubes, and which is why I think it is so important that we have people, like Sean Fain or, on the actual policy level or practical level, and then more on the cultural level too, like, Tim Waltz or something that people can relate to, without sounding like John gets on here and starts spouting off all his college talk and his esoteric shit and his like 7-syllable words and everything. That's not going to connect to your average Joe. We need folks who are just, going to be real salt of the earth folks and bring it down to practical levels. That's what we got.
I love how you were just like, yeah, John uses big words, like esoteric.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Rare miss on my part right there. Before we go to the next Elon topic, I wanted to ask Sam and Gabe about this. So you guys are big into talking about like the history and the start of the labor movement. Do you guys have like music you play? Because in my mind, I just imagine you guys playing the Big Rock Candy Mountain, because that's what I think of when I think of the old labor movements and everything. If not, it's something I recommend because I like that song a lot. It always makes me think of it basically makes me think of hobos back from the 1930s, really. But but I feel like there's a lot of great communist rhetoric in that song. I love it.
Actually, we used to we're going through a little bit of a change with the podcast now, but we used to have I'm a musician and I used to record songs at the end of every episode that had to do with the topic. And actually, one of the episodes, I wish I remembered which one, but I actually recorded Big Rock Candy Mountain.
Love it.
I should re-release that. But yeah, that's a great song. It's exact you on point. It's about the hobos of the old times and going to a place where there's no cops and where you can wear bare feet and eat corn right off the cob, you know.
It's all the cops have wooden legs.
Yeah.
There's alcohol streaming from the rocks, and the hens lay hard-boiled eggs or something.
There
I fucking love that song, man. I love it. It's fantastic. There was another one. This one might be a little bit. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, and on it having like communisty overtones, Harry McClintock was a longtime IWW member and like radical lefty union guy throughout the whole 19 teens.
That's industrial workers of the world, by the way.
Yeah. So more anarcho-syndicalist technically, but the Wobblies had a wide range of ideals.
A lot of times on the show, John and I, we have a good laugh at how there's like 40 different flavors of leftists. We always have a good time with that. That's all. Anarcho-syndicalist is our favorite one because it's just such a fucking mouthful to say. It's pretty great. Another one, I don't want to turn this into like a music show. This is the last one I mentioned, but oh no, we lost John. Oh no, John apparently has no interest in hearing about the music of early 20th century labor movement.
George Soros, what have you done?
George Soros. He's called John up to the big leagues. He has another project ready for John. But so there was I grew up in church. I don't know about you guys, but there was a song that we sang all the time called "In the Sweet By and By, We Will Meet on That Beautiful Shore." Oh, do you guys know where I'm going with this? There was a like the phrase "pie in the sky" was okay. You guys already know, but for those who aren't aware, so pie in the sky these days is used to describe something that's fanciful, something that's outrageous that you're never going to be able to get. It's a joke, and but back then it was used derogatory in the other fashion, in that it was telling people, oh, don't worry about labor unions and don't worry about workers' rights because there'll be pie in the sky for you when you're done. And there was a parody of the song "In the Sweet By and By," and it said, like, "In the sweet by and by, there'll be pie in the sky when you die." And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that one, but that's another one of my favorite labor union era comedic songs in my fashion. But that's a pretty good one too. Oh, go ahead.
I thought Gabe was going to take that. I'll take that. Yeah, that's another brilliant song. That one was penned by
God, I love it.
by fellow Wobbly. Man, we're just doing all the Wobbly songs. That was by Joe Hill.
Sam did not expect that he would get on this show and like just hit his exact like interests.
Can we talk about nothing else, please? TJ, continue.
No, nothing else.
Do you know any other songs, man?
I know. Let's list off all the 20th century labor songs. Well, I was going to have a song, but another thing I was going to say, this one, I think most people listening probably know, is we're talking about the way the phrase "pie in the sky" has been flipped over the last 100 years. "Pull yourself up by the bootstrap" was also flipped in a worse way, in that, we use it as a positive. Yeah, pull yourself up, but then it was used in a mocking way 100 years ago. All right, I'm done with the etymology of songs and words and shit like that. Let's move on to actual topic.
Free bird.
Sorry, Joe.
Free bird.
Free bird. Let's go. Let's go.
I think we need to come back for another episode that's just a discussion of the basic. There's a book called The Big Red Songbook, and it's all of the Wobbly songs, and you need to order yourself a copy. And we should just go through that entire book on the next episode. So
that does sound pretty fun.
we would totally do that too.
Only if I can bring my banjo.
Let's move on to our next topic here. And we are talking once again about Elon Musk, because it has been a relatively slow news week, and Elon Musk is just constantly doing dumb shit. We had actually planned to talk about this topic last week when the news story started, and Elon Musk announced that Twitter was suing advertisers that decided to stop advertising on Twitter, which is maybe the most baby bitch boy move I've ever heard in my entire life. But one of the companies just ceased to exist shortly after that. So everyone was like, is the lawsuit going to continue? And they announced yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that yes, in fact, they are going to keep suing this group of advertisers. It is maybe the most ridiculous law. And there's been a lot of lawsuits. America is just the history of ridiculous lawsuits. But I can't actually believe that Elon Musk would do such a obviously weak sauce thing. Like, this just sounds like something of someone who wants to get dunked on constantly is suing advertise. Even if he's correct, even if this is illegal, it's such a bad optics on him that I'm surprised he would even try and do it. Did you feel similarly, TJ?
So when I first saw it, my first thought was, one, hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And, you know, I was one, I'm sure, of thousands of people who shared the clip of Elon Musk sitting in that interview, and it says, if people want to try to blackmail me with advertising, to try to blackmail me with money, don't advertise. Don't do it. Don't. He was like tossing his head like a child when he was saying it, and he said, "Go fuck yourself." And he was waiting for like an applause line from the audience that never came. And then he said it again more enforcefully, "Go fuck yourself." And they had like this nervous laughter. And then people went on to do it, and he's throwing a fit about it. Now, the legality of it escapes me, or the illegality of it escapes me, because if I remember correctly, he is suing them on an antitrust basis, saying that they have collaborated to withhold advertising from them, like in a conspiratorial manner. And I was like, well, people don't have to advertise on your platform. I don't really get that. I don't know if you guys are more familiar with this, like if that's actually illegal. It doesn't sound like it is. But like you said, John, even if, let's say it was for whatever reason, it doesn't make you look good. It doesn't, like, people are avoiding your platform for a reason. And just like, this is kind of like off topic here, but you know, what he's done to Twitter is like capital offense as far as I'm concerned. Like, I love Twitter back in the day. I know it had its problems and its issues, but it was a useful platform that you could get news from very quickly. And now it's just, you see like every other post I see is like from Long Knives 1488 Day of the Rope shit, and it's like, okay, it's just a bed of Nazis now. And that's why there's no advertisers on there. That's why nobody wants to be on Twitter anymore, and fewer people are using it. It just seems like this is just the free market at work. I don't understand. Like, what did you think, Sam? Did you ever run across this?
I agree with you with it. It's just a free market. I mean, if you want to, that's the game you want to play. You want to play free market. You want to play capitalism. There you go. That's what happens. I don't think Elon Musk can't come to terms with the fact that he sucks. But where's all the antitrust laws against him with all the stuff he's buying up? And I don't know. I'm exhausted by this gentleman. I'm exhausted by Elon Musk already.
I think I hear him in your background there, Sam.
Oh, very good. Very good. Very good.
Oh, she is 2 years old and far more intelligent than that guy.
I was going to say, Lucy can run laps around Musk.
It is great how just breathtakingly unimpressive Elon Musk is. It's just, I love seeing this shit, and, you know, watching him whine and bitch and complain. I mean, it's a lot like Trump in a lot of ways, but he seems more pathetic than Trump. And Trump is hardly a paragon of strength and courage or whatever, but he seems a lot. I would much rather spend an hour with Donald Trump than an hour with Elon Musk. Easy choice, absolutely. I'd be far more entertained. I'll put it that way.
Are those the only two choices?
Yeah, they're the only two choices.
Gun to my head, do I pick Elon Musk or Donald Trump? Can I pick the gun? Is that something?
You brought up a good point here, though, TJ, is that I understand. Yeah, thank you. I understand the people who like Trump. I disagree with them. I think they're stupid, but I get it.
Yeah.
I don't understand people who like Elon Musk in the year 2024. In the year even like 2020, it's like you still had a relatively generally good impression of him as a businessman. He's an inventor and whatever. He has so thoroughly, really the whole Twitter saga has so thoroughly and clearly shown that just because you're rich doesn't mean you're good at anything. Like it has been maybe the greatest demonstration against capitalism that I've ever seen in such a public way in my entire life. And he just constantly he just steps on rakes and hits himself in the face over and over again. And I just don't understand why his fanboys constantly take bullets for him. It blows my mind because again, I get it with Trump. With him, he's just pure loser energy constantly all the time. Gabe, were you, how do I put this? When Elon Musk first hit the scene, I had a favorable impression of him. He's the guy that made the electric cars. That's cool. Like, let him keep going. And then probably around, 2018-ish is when it really started to turn from him in my mind. And ever since he somehow algorithmically radicalized himself on Twitter, he's just been the worst person on the planet. But what has been your perspective on Elon Musk throughout the years?
I think my political consciousness kind of came up as Elon Musk was circling the drain. So as I just became more politically aware, that coincided with him being more and more of a dipshit in public. So I think I remember vaguely liking Teslas a decade ago and thinking they were like kind of cool. But now absolutely hating anything that isn't public transportation. No, it's like I'm obviously labor historian, so my brain is broken and has to look at everything through history. And I just keep thinking about would Vanderbilt or Carnegie or any of these insanely wealthy people from the turn or all of the old barons, if they had Twitter, would they be doing this? And to a certain extent, I think we lost something in society when the old aristocracy died out. And that when you still had the old money of my family has owned this one section of land in southern England since 1070, and it was a gift from William the Conqueror. And when you still had those people around and influencing even American politics, they kept these new little upstarts a little bit in check. And now that we've lost them, you get Elon Musk on Twitter stepping on rakes constantly. So I'm advocating for a return to landed aristocracy, mostly to keep Elon Musk off of Twitter.
Listen.
That's how
Gabe,
bad Elon Musk is.
Listen, Gabe, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that. That was incredible. So there's two things that I want to point out about Gabe's statement there. The first thing, I want to congratulate him on getting the timeline correct with his statement too, where he said that I've owned this land since 1070 when William the Conqueror gave it my family. William the Conqueror became King of England in 1066. So he fucking nailed that. I want to say that was very impressive. And also, this thing with the aristocracy, I've said too, because it's so weird how comfortable I am with that thought, because yeah, we don't know what Andrew Carnegie's Twitter profile would have looked like. I have a hard time imagining Andrew Carnegie was as dumb as Elon Musk. I refuse to accept that. And I also think, even from an altruism standpoint, I'm not saying Andrew Carnegie was a good person. Elon Musk would have never funded public libraries and, funded institution of fine arts. He would have never done that shit, or he would never do that shit. Andrew Carnegie did. There was still this we're going back to the aristocratic norms of like the noblesse oblige, and like that doesn't seem to exist at all with our current rich people. And
no,
so
TJ, Elon thinks that's what he's doing with Twitter. Like, Elon thinks that's what he's doing.
Yeah. His version of noblesse oblige is they're just helping folks channel themselves into the market, and then that's gonna help with their self-improvement. That's kind of his warped version of it. But the thing that you mentioned about the returning to the landed nobility and how that might actually be better than the system that this chaos we have here, and it's kind of like the start of the resentment of the rich people in the United States, because something does come along with that. It is a lot easier to defend your position as the person who has all the money, who's in charge. Is like, well, my family has owned this land for 500 years. Other than, I've been here for 15 minutes just like you, and I happen to have more money. It has this weird kind of vibe to it. But say what you want about the medieval aristocracy, but aristocracy, I think, translates to rule by the excellent. I think at least the first person in the aristocracy had to be an impressive guy. He had to actually pick up a sword, get on a horse, convince his friends to fight along with him, defeat an enemy, hold the position, actually set up a system of governance that made sense so that he could have the land, get the food, get the money, get the logistics all set up. The first guy actually had to be someone who could actually handle a shit. His dumbass kid, who knows? But it's just funny seeing that, the system that we replaced it with is just a dumber aristocracy. And I'm not arguing we go back to it, but I see where Gabe is coming from. I don't want to put it that way. I see why he's saying it. I do get it.
There's a secret third option that we could try.
I know, right? It's so weird. How can we? What could this be?
I do also want to say if I could bring anything from the modern world back into the past, I do want to see the 1920s and 30s on Twitter, because as much as we think we know what online leftist infighting looks like, I want to see Trotsky and Stalin tweeting at each other.
Oh, that'd be so great.
24/7.
That would be so great.
And just the insanity of the 20s on Twitter would be a joy to just read through.
Can you imagine if Karl Marx was a poster? If he could just post his thought, like, could you imagine?
He effectively was, but
he was, but if he could just do it like in real time and shit, I that would be some fun shit.
Actually, honestly, this is some good content. Like, I should make this. That's a really good TikTok idea.
Listen, reading like Marx's letters to Engels are hilarious sometimes. Like, there's this one time when Engels' wife died or something, and Karl Marx wrote because Engels was, bankrolling Karl Marx the entire time, and Marx wrote a letter to Engels, is like, "Hey man, sorry to hear your wife died. You think you can still send me some more money?" Like, it's the next line where he's like, "Send me a little bit more cash." It's like, this guy, grade A poster. He'd have been fantastic. I'd have loved it.
This is why I love this show, TJ, because we started this topic talking about Elon Musk suing his advertisers, and it just naturally flowed into Karl Marx. What if he was posting on Twitter? Wonderful. And I also realized, don't do that content, because that's what our good friend EJ does. That's literally his entire channel. He's essentially what if these historical events were made by posters.
Good shit.
Karl Marx just should have started a Patreon.
Why anything of that?
It should have been so simple.
Alternatively, we all need to just find a friend who has a textile factory in Manchester to live off.
Don't we all need one of those? I wanted to address a couple of these comments before we moved on to our next thing. So Tweedledee asks, when y'all going to talk about quantitative easing? I can talk about quantitative easing on our Wednesday show, but I want to explain something here. I just made a TikTok explaining how inflation rates aren't cumulative inflation. I don't think we're ready to have the conversation about what quantitative easing is when this is the debate we're having online right now.
People haven't figured out how marginal tax rates work. I mean, like, you think we can get into altering the money supply? It's just like, that's the problem with having these conversations, man. That you talk to people, they couldn't tell you shit about fuck, and I'm supposed to expect to talk about, I don't know. It's just kind of obnoxious. I don't know. That's why I try to tell jokes. It's because you might as well, right? Let's see.
Trees Tops said he actually lost a debate to a monarchist that had compelling points. Trees Tops, I don't know if that's a joke, but I don't know how one loses a debate to a monarchist. I've never heard a monarchist argument that makes any fucking sense.
Well, I mean, the divine right of kings is fairly convincing. I mean, if you ask me, of course. Like it's like, yeah, God said this family should be in charge. Who am I to argue with the man upstairs? I don't know. That's a slam dunk argument if you ask me. So did John freeze? Did we lose John again? Oh, okay. I thought we froze. You were froze. But side note, I was just scribbling here, talking about you. Sam mentioned Karl Marx having a Patreon, and I started thinking about Karl Marx creating other apps, like dating apps. That would be kind of fun. And I think that OK Kami would be a good dating app for Karl Marx to create. Another one.
TJ, shut up right now. OK Kami, with that'll fucking kill.
You know, it's right.
That would be a great dating app for communists. Oh my fucking God, TJ.
I have two more. Two more. And so Spectre, I think, is a pretty good one. Spectre sounds pretty perfect. And then my personal favorite is Swipe Left. I think would be pretty good. And so yeah, like that sounds like that should be an
offshoot of our show. That's how we get into
our dating app.
No, that is our men's advice. Dating
yeah,
that's a new show. That's a spin-off.
Oh yeah,
Swipe Left.
Yeah,
TJ, that's
I do like it.
You're on it today, TJ.
John and I do little segments where we give advice to young men about just life stuff, and sometimes we talk about dating. But Swipe Left would be a good name for that segment. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like it. We're just having fun today, folks. We're just having a lot of fun out here. Okay.
Sam and I both married our high school sweethearts, so we've dated. Neither of us have ever actually dated, so we'd be great to give dating advice.
Well, marriage advice is more important. I mean, yeah. So I can't give you anything on that one. So how long have you guys been married?
Well, we're not married to each other yet. But
your wife don't know. We're gonna break the news. You heard it here first, folks.
You can't see it, Gabe, but I'm on my knees right now, buddy. Or at least on one knee.
Yeah. I think
Gabe's taking a long time to answer this question.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember.
Gabe's really hoping
Sam
his wife ain't watching
first,
right now,
or if I got married first. But it's been 6 years.
Okay.
14 years.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. So that's just. I think it was 62 seconds it took for Gabe to answer that question. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But all right. Okay, let's bring this baby home. Oh, anything else you guys wanted to add to that? That was a great segment.
I just wanted to throw out in winning arguments against monarchists, there's a really good song called La Guillotine Permanente.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
sounds great.
From the Good Times, and it's one that we should all be learning.
I love it.
I think that's probably just the best response whenever you find a monarchist. Just loudly sing that.
I love it. Oh, had a comment here. Aristocrats were the first thieves. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Nature's bounty was made for all. The first thief was the one who says this part is just for me. Yeah, I mean that is the communist view of it. That's perfectly true. That's perfectly true. But But man, thieves are kind of cool. You got to admit, in a lot of ways, we do look up to a lot of thieves. I mean, you especially if you do it wearing like armor and a sword. I mean, come on, you got to admit that's just kind of cool. I'm not saying we should respect and emulate it.
If you rob a bank wearing armor and a sword, tweet at us at the left.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a bank robber? Well, bank robbers I wouldn't put in the same category as, robber barons and aristocrats and shit like that. But those are just good men trying to feed their families, bank robbers, if you ask me. But all right, let's get this show on the road here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Ilhan Omar fending off challengers to win her primary. And this came to my attention because we had two members of the squad who were not so fortunate, and that was Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, who both lost their primaries in New York and in Missouri. And you can't really stay abreast of everybody's primary that's going around the country, even the politicians that you really like. But I was a little worried about Omar because I saw that when I did a show with Destructo Jugo, he's from Minneapolis, and he was telling me that Ilhan Omar isn't particularly popular in her district, which kind of surprised me. That he said she won there like 52-48 or something, which is a solid win, but it's a lot closer of a win than I would have guessed for someone like Ilhan Omar. But I was reading about it here. And so Omar prevailed over Don Samuels, her challenger, a former member of the Minneapolis City Council, who had come just 2 points shy of unseating her in the midterms. Also, with two little-known competitors, her win comes a week after Cori Bush lost an election that drew millions of dollars in spending from pro-Israel groups. Omar's race didn't see that type of spending, and she faced less opposition than the past. The American, or APAC, the most powerful pro-Israel group, stayed out of the race this cycle, despite looking to unseat candidates it deemed not sufficiently pro-Israel, which they labeled Ilhan Omar. And despite United Democracy Project's Super PAC spending six figures against Omar in 2022, six figures. Like, come on, you guys, what the fuck? That's no dedication whatsoever. So, and Ilhan Omar, who was a refugee from a civil war in Somalia, was one of the first two Muslim women in Congress, and she's been an outspoken critic of Israel. And AIPAC didn't make any big public play and warning against her. And so people were wondering why. Like why weren't they putting as much power in this as they were with everyone else? And that's the question they asked in the article. And Ken Martin, chair of Minnesota's Democratic Farmer Labor Party, which endorsed her, pointed to her establishment backing and the makeup of the district, which is home to progressive Minneapolis. Martin said that no amount of money was going to help Samuels. Several cycles ago, when she first ran, you wouldn't have had found a lot of our elected officials supporting her, but they support her now because she's been much more effective in building coalitions. And that's the part that I wanted to focus on in this segment right here. That not specifically on Ilhan Omar as an individual, but with her strategy. Now, I can't speak to how Bowman and Bush worked their way up or what coalitions that they formed while they were, attempting to run for Congress and eventually ran for Congress. But actually, one thing I've noticed that leftists aren't particularly good at, and that's kind of the nature of who we are and how we think, is we're very good at shutting doors on people. That if we don't see eye to eye on almost everything, we see you more as an enemy than we do as someone with a slightly divergent view. And I don't know how she did it, but I think that is kind of an important step to take if we actually want to succeed. And I haven't actually asked what Sam and Gabe think about Biden and Harris and everything, but I've seen a lot of leftists who they have these standards to meet, which I don't fault anyone for. If you have certain standards for your politician, that is your right. I'm never going to shit on you for it. But I think a lot of them are kind of unrealistic in what they expect people to meet in the United States of America, not in the country that we wish we live in, but the one that we actually live in. And you may have to do things that are kind of unpopular to your leftist base if you want to survive. Like, you're no good to anybody if you're out of a job. So what are your thoughts on that in general, Gabe, with coalition building and how people on the left are doing so, and if we are or not doing a good job at it?
I think broadly, well, first, my general statement on electoralism on anything in the online left is you vote at most 2 days out of the year. That leaves you 363 days to organize your workplace, community, and neighborhood. Go do that work. But at least with and like with Harrison Waltz, I think there's a strategic benefit to getting them in power, in that it can create a little bit more space, especially if they keep good NLR or keep Biden's NLRB picks. It'll create more space to keep the current labor movement resurge going, which is where power will actually come from down the line. Because I think I very much get the feeling that we're like right in not a perfect comparison, but kind of similar to the early 30s in terms of how precarious everything is. Obviously, the economy is doing a little bit better now than it was in the early 30s. But like there's both a rising
what happened
fashion
in the early 30s with the economy? I hear that. Never heard of bad times.
So the economy, it wasn't great.
John, what have you done? You don't know Gabe well enough. Don't do stuff like that. Don't ask him questions.
Every single episode that we do that takes place in the early 30s, I keep doing a like recap of the first couple of years of the Great Depression, and I think Sam will kill me if I do it again. So the Great Depression was bad. But I at least see some similarities today in terms of like the labor movement's picking back up. There's a beginning of a discussion of some kind of progressive politics kind of in the general zeitgeist. Now, obviously, we don't have a near as strong of a communist party as we did then. The Socialist Party in the 30s there were still like a couple 10,000 members. They're bigger than the DSA is now. So they had more influence than even the DSA. They had more influence then than the DSA does now. But I think that there's a space to at least get a little bit more power or a little bit more pressure from below. I fully expect it or any movement forward is going to be like pulling teeth, but hopefully it'll be pulling fewer teeth than it would be under Biden, and significantly fewer teeth than it will be under Trump, is my cheery outlook on everything.
I love it. I was expecting after Sam says like, "Oh, here we go," Gabe would be like, "All right, folks, on October 4th, 1929, let me tell you what happened," and just launching into it from there. But all right, Sam, what do you think?
Gabe said that as best as I could ever. So I'll just go back to the story and just going back to APAC. You know, Citizens United and lobbying in this country has done such irreparable harm to every facet of life in society, and it's a real shame. APAC just couldn't. I don't know if they saw the writing on the wall and thought she was going to win anyway, or they just thought they knew they couldn't buy this election. But I'm happy it turned out the way it did, and hopefully APAC. I don't know. I don't want to go down this whole. We'll get into a whole different topic.
Yeah,
start talking about APAC and.
I mean,
funding
APAC is a significant part of this story. Because APAC basically they chose, we're going after Bush, we're going after Bowman, and they won, and they even fucking bragged about it. And it is starting to be a conversation now regarding AIPAC specifically that I really wish more Democrats had the fucking balls to say that. And again, I feel like this would be a normie American would agree with this statement. A lobbying arm for a foreign country shouldn't be allowed to spend money in American elections. No matter what that country is, I think most people can agree with that. And it is a winning argument, but it's scary for these politicians because if they're precarious at all, AIPAC has shown we're just going to bury you underneath piles and piles of money. But I think it's important to also note that they decided not to do that for Ilhan Omar, and they decided not to do it for Tlaib, and they can't do it to AOC. And that's because of what TJ was mentioning earlier, is that there are as many systems as there are to keep the power of the wealthy capitalist class entrenched. Those systems can be used against them as well. And I think AOC is the best example of that. We were just commenting on this, I don't know if it was yesterday, TJ, or last week, where like she was giving away backpacks in her local community. The way that these voting systems are set up, if you just entrench yourself in the local community and do well by them, you can remain in Congress forever. The only reason Bush and Bowman lost is because they were in precarious positions. They fought a lot of national level battles that lost them political capital, that did nothing for their local constituency. And I think that AOC in particular gets a lot of hate from online leftists for some of the coalition that she building that she does, especially with centrist members of the party. But that's how you fucking build power. Like in order to win the game, you have to play by the rules of the people who made the game. And if you aren't going to do that, fine, go firebomb a Walmart, but I don't see you doing that. So in absence of that, this is our best way forward, I think. And it's a lesson that I think that progressives now and future progressives are going to need to learn is make the people immediately around you, organize them, make them happy first above everything else, and then push whatever progressive policy you can forward. And I genuinely think, and I've gotten on my stump and I've said this before, Harris winning the presidency is the absolute best possible outcome we could have ever possibly fucking imagined ever since Bernie lost in 2020. Like Bernie winning in 2020, probably the best outcome, but then that didn't happen. So now we have Biden. Biden's all right, milquetoast conservative, liberal moderate politician. Did surprisingly well with the National Labor Relations Board. I think we can all agree with that. Had some moments that we definitely didn't like forcing the railway workers to end their strike. But he did some really bad things, like what he's doing in Israel. And the fact that we went from that to Harris, who her voting record in the Senate is one of the most progressives that was in the Senate at the time. I think only Bernie had a more progressive voting record than her, maybe a couple others. But the fact that that's what we got, and now we could be looking at 8 years of that and Waltz, and then who's going to be in her prime? AOC is going to be right there. And that, to me, at a time when wealth demographics are going to shift, there's going to be a massive downward transfer of wealth from the boomers who are dying off to the millennials, who are the first generation in our life in modern history to not move farther right as they age. You have the cocktail for a massive progressive movement in the next 30 years or so that could end with the objectives that we all want to see it end with. Gabe, you're the historian. How crazy is that line of reasoning that I just put out?
I don't think it's too crazy. I think the thought that
I'm not betting on it, Gabe. Yeah. I want to say I'm not saying this is the most likely outcome. I'm saying for the first time in my life, I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I think the one thing that I'm currently debating in my head is what's going to happen May 1st, 2028, when you have a UAW general strike. I think was it AFT or the NEA? It was AFT, I think. The American Federation of Teachers announced that they were lining up their contracts for then as well. If other unions start doing that, the response of a Harris-Walz administration to an actual labor upsurge that honestly there hasn't been a coordinated labor strike like this in a very long time. And usually general strikes aren't like this. They're usually not planned out 4 years ahead. So how they respond to that is going to set the stage for everything else moving forward. And I don't necessarily I'm split on whether or not it's going to immediately go to shit and the National Guard is going to get called out if things start going sideways. But there is also the possibility that they take more of the New Deal approach, and I don't expect them to be out on the picket lines, but I could see them taking more of the well, it's not the or the federal government's job is to mediate. We're not going to come down and destroy this movement. And if they do that, then that will probably give more breathing room to keep that momentum going, which would then set the stage for an even more progressive
maybe an AOC Fane ticket.
Yeah. I mean, if Biden hadn't dropped out, I was a couple days away from just writing in Sean Fain and hoping that enough people did that that was my Hail Mary. But yeah, I mean, there's anything can happen, but I'm looking at May 1st, 28 to see we won't really know how Harris and Walz would respond to an insurgent labor movement until that, or unless something pops up beforehand.
I'll send you the invite for the show that week, Gabe.
Okay. If we're not all underwater at that point. So
that's a good point. Sam, any remarks on that?
I like that you brought up the general strike, Gabe, because I'm not going to reiterate what you just said, but yeah, I've been going back and forth about who to vote for. Well, I mean, I'm definitely not voting for Trump, but I mean who to vote for. Harris is the better choice, but I know we can get optimistic. But I mean, if you look down, honey, hold on. If you look down history, we've kind of been here. So,
and all I say is, but I find that you have to look at things with an optimistic lens, because if you look at all the negative, you're just gonna die. It's too much. It's an avalanche, and you're never gonna mobilize the amount of people required if you don't pretend that there's a shot. And the only it will die on the vine before it ever happens if you constantly just assume the worst. You'll probably be right, but you will never win.
Yeah. Something that we've said, I think, every show the past couple of weeks since Harris has been nominated, and especially since Walz has been put on, is that there's only so far a political movement can get that's built on eternal cynicism. It's not gonna, like, people don't like that. As much as hokey and as goofy as it is for people to be waving their American flag and chanting "God bless America," it works. People want to stand for something that matters. Like, they don't want to think too much about how shitty it is and how, like, stuff that we think about all the time, that best case scenario, we're going to get 5% of what we want. Like, that's, we can die happy knowing that we got that 5%, given how difficult our task is ahead of us. They want something to root for. And, you know, this is why it annoys me that conservatives have stolen things like the American flag and stolen things like family values, and as much as I, you know, dismiss it, you know, stolen church and stuff, like stuff that's just regular ass people shit. And the conservatives have taken it over. And, you know, we can firebomb Walmarts, like John said. We can dress up like Black Bloc Antifa and all that. That's great. I got it. But it's not going to, you're never going to get a majority of the American population to mobilize behind some of that. You need that Captain America, Superman message out there, goofy as it is, to actually motivate people. And, you don't have to buy into it, but you have to use it. That's all I'm saying here. Be duplicitous. That's my point here, folks. Yeah, be duplicitous with your political messaging. And with talking about APAC, John said how people are afraid to go after APAC, you know, for obvious, you know, reasons. You get hit with the anti-Semitic mark and people believe it. You're never going to get rid of that. And you're right that the idea that a foreign nation is openly lobbying in our elections shouldn't be acceptable. But people don't really see Israel as a foreign nation. At least not enough people. They kind of see it as America Junior. They say, well, of course, you know, that's like an arm that's directly tied to us. And also, John, you mentioned about how gunning for or focusing on larger scale problems rather than minor ones detracts you from the votes that actually matter to you. And I think that's a really good point, because a lot of times people say that, you know, votes don't matter or voting's not a big deal. And it's like, if voting didn't matter, corporations wouldn't spend hundreds of millions of dollars every election, like trying to, Republicans wouldn't work so hard trying to suppress votes in minority communities if voting didn't matter. And it does. I mean, it doesn't matter as much as we like to think it does, but it does do some, it can lead to some change. And also tied to that is focusing on your community. And I was thinking about the expression, you know, all politics is local. That's what really forms like your satellite community. And the politicians who do it best are ones that we don't even like with Lauren Boebert, for example. I like to say all politics is yokel when it comes to her or something. You know, it's just that you get your constituency, and it's funny that she had to switch districts, but it still worked. Like, it still worked going that way. But yeah, I think that, you know, working smarter. Of course, it's easy for me to say I'm not a politician, but, you know, it's easy for me to say, but I do see the patterns that tend to work. And Ilhan Omar, AOC, you know, they've shown that these things can work, and I'm all here for it. All right, we can wrap that one up. Good stuff.
That was a good cut right there. I really like that conversation. That was that
was good.
That was a little more, I don't know if intellectual is the right word.
A little cerebral.
A little more cerebral than we usually go. But I really like what Gabe and Sam brought to the conversation there. Sam, you have something to say?
Yeah, I mean, if I can bring it down back to personal real quick, kind of going back to what both you, John, and TJ said about, you know, politics is local. That, you know, that's really where we should be looking for. We should be working locally, organizing. And while our system's broken, but we need to fix the system. It's going to take years to fix the system. It's going to take people. It's going to take people power. And like what Gabe said about the 2028 general election, that more and more unions are signing up for and getting the word out. And we need the time to organize this massive force of worker power. That all being said, between Harris and Trump, I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have many trans friends. Harris is going to do better for them than Trump ever will. So for things like that, you kind of got to you got to kind of be like, yes, the system is crappy. Harris isn't the perfect thing, but maybe that's the first step into whatever we're trying to go to, whatever our goal is. So I'm not backing Harris, but I'm just trying to reiterate that, you know, we got to stick together, and we got to do it as workers. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Sounds like Sam is a proud member of the K-Hive, folks. That's what I heard. I don't know about you.
I can't even pronounce her name. Are you kidding me?
All right. Let's, before we end this, I wanted to address Kyle's comment here. Ben and Jesuit Religious Engineering post Matthew 25:31-46 on conservative capitalist posts talking about taking care of the poor, convince conservatives Jesus is a liberal. Kyle, little inside baseball here. Whenever I am having like a little bit of a slump in the views for my TikToks, I go to the Jesus is a socialist well. It fucking kills every time because it's true. And conservatives hate it. And it is a wonderful shtick to get on. Let's wrap this up with our outro before we exit this stream here. So, Sam, I explained this to Gabe, but we put this at the end of every episode. So I'm going to introduce us, and then I'm going to throw to Gabe to tell people where to find you. You can then jump in afterwards, and then TJ is going to take us home and take us out.
So real quick before we do that, John, I want to suggest something. So we ran into this last time. We had two people from the same show. I don't remember. It was the head in the office because what we did is we threw to one and he says, "Hey, we're so-and-so. You can find us on this podcast." And the other guy's like, "Yeah, you could find me on the same podcast." So like we may want to throw just one of them. We may want to throw just one of them because I don't know which one you guys want to take. Well, we can see Gabe, so that would probably be the easy one to go to. Yeah.
All right, we'll do that. Sam, if you want to say something, feel free. But you're right; it doesn't make sense to introduce.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it was so funny when it happened. It's like...
All right, you officially did it. You made it to the end of an episode of The Left Wing. Your prize is that you get to hear where you can find our wonderful guest this week. So, Gabe, if people want to listen to the Labor Jawn podcast, where can they find it?
We are available on all major podcast platforms. You can also find us at our brand new website, laborjawn.com, which is LABORJAWN. We're also regularly shitposting and memeing on Instagram. And that the memeing is all Sam. I cannot take credit for any of that. And I think that's really where we are for the most part. We theoretically are on other social medias, but nah.
And stay tuned for our search for Labor Jawn. It's still out there.
I can't wait. Hey, thank you guys for joining us. It's been a blast. Sam and Gabe can be found on the Labor Jawn podcast. We also look forward to having them back on May 1st, 2028, after the kickoff of the general strike. Well, we planned that out, 4 years in advance, but it's going to be a good time. Thank you guys for joining. Catch us next time. All right, good stuff. All right, this is where we wrap up, folks. Good times. Anything for the people listening, John, before we head out?
No, thank you guys for being here. We'll see you next Wednesday at 6:30.
Peace. All right.